Okay, time to take a look at what's grabbing headlines around the world now. And Florence Villemenoz is back in the studio with me. Hello, Flo. And we're going to start stateside, where newspapers are focusing on that historic and deadly flooding in the southern state of Louisiana.
That's right. It certainly is getting front page news around the world. Let's take a look at the front page of the Wall Street Journal today, which points out that things could actually get a lot worse for Louisiana. You can see the state is preparing for further flooding. Now, parts of southern and central Louisiana absorbed 2 feet of rain in less than 3 days. For reference, that's basically Seattle rainy season. And of course, Seattle is a very rainy place. And also areas that were hit were really unaccustomed to flooding. And in fact, many of the people who had to evacuate their homes didn't have flood insurance. So this natural disaster is getting a lot of attention. The governor says that over 10 people have been killed, 40,000 homes damaged at least.
Okay, well, you've pulled out an article which lashes out against the US media for being conspicuously silent on the disaster, given the scale of suffering.
That's right. Salon says that the US media really took almost too much time to start reacting to this story. You can see they're talking about Louisiana's quiet crisis, cable news, and the folly of disaster porn coverage. This is the worst disaster since Hurricane Sandy. Why is the media downplaying it? Well, Salon is very harsh today and says, sadly, it's not that surprising. There is no such thing as television news in the United States. There are networks that peddle entertainment under the guise of news. And the article is quite cynical and says, like, if this storm had happened in a place that's more famous, then there would be anchors, there would be news crews going to hit the place. We saw that when there was a Hurricane Katrina, for instance, there was nonstop coverage. Well, Salon says that's because it was a story about race and class privilege, and it happened in a famous American city. Salon says what's happening in Louisiana is just regular people living out a nightmare in a place no one cares about. Essentially, it's not good for ratings.
Okay, well, let's move over to the UK, where a radical Muslim cleric and lawyer has been sentenced to 10 years for terrorism. There's a feeling in many British papers that it's about time.
That's right. The Guardian says that for years now, Anjem Choudhury seemed immune to British terror laws. He and his extremist groups are believed to have inspired at least 100 people from Britain into terrorism. Why is he being brought to justice only now? Well, essentially, he was convicted for supporting ISIS, but a lot of papers saying this is only a fraction of his jihadist-related activity. Some papers are thrilled by what's happening. Let's take a look at the front page of the tabloid, the Daily Mail. You can see nailed. For 20 years, Choudhury has been, well, they call him Britain's most notorious hate preacher on benefits. He's been laughing at Britain and spawning terror worldwide, and now he faces 10 years behind bars.
Okay, well, like you said, probably just only the tip of the iceberg there. But papers say this conviction has raised a real debate on the limits of freedom of speech in the UK.
That's right. And this is, of course, something that comes up a lot in the UK, which is very attached to freedom of speech. The Telegraph, in its editorial, has an interesting take on things and says, every time there's some sort of a terrorist atrocity, promises are made to gag these kind of preachers of hate. But as was the case with Choudhury, it's easier said than done in a country where, there is the rule of law. And The Independent, for once, agrees with the conservative daily The Telegraph. It says that Choudhury's conviction shows that free speech is not without limits. Jailing a person for words they have spoken ought to trouble anyone who believes in liberal democratic values. Yet, to protect those very values, it's sometimes necessary to be intolerant of intolerance.
Well, let's move on to something a little bit more lighthearted now. The Olympic Games in Rio, and a Chinese swimmer has broken a taboo. I did hear about this, talking to her fans about her period.
That's right. This is the Chinese swimmer Fu Yuanhe. She's actually become somewhat of an internet sensation during these Olympics. You might remember a really cute interview she gave after winning a race during those Olympics. Now she's also become an internet sensation for being so candid about her period. Now this was in an interview she gave after her team placed 4th in a relay race. You can see here all sorts of praise on the website BuzzFeed. She mentioned that she got her period the night before. She says, I'm feeling pretty weak, I'm feeling pretty tired. She says that could explain why she didn't swim as well as she usually does, but she did go on to say that it was her own fault. But she has certainly raised a lot of praise for breaking this taboo. If we take a look at another article in The Guardian, it actually says that she deserves a gold medal for saying, talking about her period in such a candid way, saying that essentially it's not a big deal. And she says that, this article says, why does it take an Olympian to break this taboo, and calls on other women to follow suit?
Okay, well, still with the Olympics, just quickly, two other female athletes are in the spotlight for really embodying the Olympic spirit.
That's right. This is a really sweet story. You can read about it in the Washington Post today. They were strangers at the starting line. Less than 20 minutes later, they were eternally linked. This is Abby D'Agostino of the United States and Nikki Hamblin of New Zealand. They collided during the women's 5,000-meter qualifying heat. But instead of running on and kind of abandoning each other, they stopped to help each other and actually encouraged each other across the finish line. There's a really sweet photo that you can see in The Independent of them hugging after they both crossed the finish line. And what's interesting is they've been really celebrated, as you said, of embodying the Olympic spirit. Some people have said that they deserve a platinum medal. And the sweet end of the story is that they have both been given places in the final, which is set to take place on Friday. So best of luck to these two women.
Well, a warm and fuzzy story to finish with amid all the other controversies in Rio. Thanks very much for that, Florence Villeminot with the International Press Review.